Hi there, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys a little bit about my Commonplace notebook, where I am in it, and providing some updates. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you guys my setup here initially. I do have a couple of other videos on my channel from my Commonplace notebook over the past year or so. If you want to check those out, I will link them in the description box below. But essentially, my Commonplace notebook is a Traveler's Company notebook, and it is pretty scuffed up. These leather covers, I guess I'm just not the best at caring for them, but I think it kind of gives it like a used, worn look, which I kind of like. I have this camera charm on here, which is also from Traveler's Company. And then you open this up, and I have two notebooks in here for now. This one is just blank. It's a blank grid. I'm not doing anything with it. This is the one I'm working in now, which is a dot grid. I started the dot grid one first. I do really like dot grids, but I kind of starting to lean towards liking grids, so I might use that one next. I also have this transparent pocket in here just to kind of keep some additional things. And the main thing that is in there is my key here. So I keep my Commonplace notebook pretty simple. Essentially, my plan for this is to document all of those little details that I want to save and remember. So quotes, interesting facts, not my own personal ideas, but ideas from others that I have collected. So I'm gonna pull this out while I work on it. So essentially what I do is I add my notes using a pen. This is a Sarasa clip in 0.5. I tend to use this pen in here because it is one that I always know I'm going to have in my stash. I don't have to worry about whether or not I will have one available for uniformity throughout my spreads. I do like to use fountain pens a lot. My current favorite fountain pen is my Pilot Vanishing Point, and I have this inked up with a brown ink. And I've toyed around with the idea of using my fountain pens in here, but then as I change the inks, I'm going to have different colors and different pens and everything. So I thought the uniformity would be nice. So the other supplies I use are these dot stickers. So I got this set off Amazon, and I will link all of my supplies in the description box below that are available. These are just a bunch of rolls here with dot stickers, and I love these to identify the categories. So what I've done is created a key of my categories on here, and I can add new categories as I need them, but these are just categories of things that I want to remember. These are the categories I have, but these refer to like my personal life. So like I have a local New York category because I live in upstate New York. I'm going to write down if I have a suggestion for something I want to try locally, I will write that down. That wouldn't necessarily make sense for you. I have cats because I love cats. I have finance economy, something I'm interested in, social media content creation. So all of these different topics are just things that interest me. And I just made this with a piece of scrapbook paper. I stamped on here and added some Tomy River paper so that I would have a key that kind of matches. And then in here, I did initially create a key here. When I'm done with this, I'm gonna kind of like cover over that. But I do use it because it helps me know like which section they're on. So I might end up switching that up at some point. So this one is 2024 through 2025. So this is volume 1. And one of the questions I get a lot is how often do I update this? And honestly, not that often. Once every couple of months, I would say. And I essentially collect all of the information I want in here through screenshots or just like saving it to a folder on my computer. And then I transfer it in here when I'm ready to work on it. So you can see I add a margin, and that's where I add the color dots. So if I'm looking for maybe like a quote from a book, I'm just gonna look to all the purple ones and know where I can find one of those. If it has a more specific like subcategory, so like here's my local New York, this is something for Albany, I put that on there to kind of remember that this is specific to Albany. I add page numbers. They don't really, I don't have an index or anything, but maybe at some point I will. And you can see I'm also printing some things that I have saved. And I drew some things in here too. This is like a fold out because I did cut something out of a magazine, which I wanted to do that as well. These are just like all of the things I've saved so far this in here. I have this marker suggestion thing from the Coffee Monster Co. for 2025. This was my own personal statistics on my YouTube, but it felt like the right kind of thing for here. So one thing I was doing recently, I've been printing these, which were from the New York Times. So I wanted to kind of make note of that and add them in here. I don't know if I'm gonna put them all together because it is kind of filling it up, but I might just do maybe a couple of pages. I think I didn't even print them all yet, but these were just some charts from the New York Times 5 years later from COVID that I thought would be very interesting. So I'm going to write that in here. I'm also thinking I have this stamp set. I haven't done stamping, but I think that might be a fun way to kind of mix it up. So what I'm gonna do is I actually filmed a segment a little while ago, me adding some of these in here. So I'm gonna put that on, and then I'm going to film me working on this today. I'm gonna do some music and voiceover as I share a little bit more of me working on this, and hopefully you can update your journal along with me. Before I do that, I just wanted to mention the rest of the supplies I have here. So I did say I pulled over this alpha stamp. It's super cute. And I might want to add some like more bold titles with. I have some mild liners. I always have my gray because that's my like go-to, which I was really only using the gray in here. Mostly I did use some colors to like color in these pie charts, but I do have my new mild liner set here because I'm thinking I might want to add a little bit more color. I have a gray zig marker. This makes a dot, so it's like a perfect bullet point dot. So here are some of those. And then I have my Funisuke hard and soft tips that I thought I could also do if I wanted a few bolder titles. So these are my supplies. Of course, you do not need everything. You just need really a pen and a notebook, potentially like a ruler to make some straight lines. And the dots are also not necessary, but I do like to categorize. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys on music and start getting this one updated. Okay, so I'm gonna jump in with some voiceover in part of this video and part's going to be music. I considered talking the whole time, and honestly, I just don't have that much to say, but I know some people really like to journal along with me. So I wanted to provide the ability for you to do that. And if not, then hopefully having me jump in with some of my talking as I have things to say will make this video a little bit more interesting, and you can, craft along or enjoy some coffee or something while you watch me update my Commonplace book. So the first thing I wanted to share was that I actually filmed some of this footage, as you can tell, a while ago. I started updating this Commonplace book. This was actually towards the end of 2024 when you see I have the blue nail polish. When I have the pink nail polish, it is April 2025. So you can tell how far apart these were. But I had filmed this with an intention of providing an update to you guys towards the end of last year, and then I never got around to editing it and posting it. And I kind of forgot what the footage was of, and so I wanted to film another update. And so that's why you're ending up with kind of these two things combined together. At the beginning of this segment, I did decorate the cover. When I first showed you me flipping through it back at the end of 2024, I had not yet done the cover, and I decided to just use some stickers from Everyday Explorers to write Commonplace, and I stamped 2024 on it. Now that is 2025, I have gone back and added 2025 on the cover. I do not date my entries, as if I'm adding something that is a fact or news or something like that is relevant, the timing of when it is relevant, then I will add that. So for example, when I'm going to add in those New York Times pieces from an article, I will put what the date is of the New York Times article. A lot of the other things in here, though, are not dated. For example, I pull quotes from books, and I don't feel the need to put a date because the date that I read it isn't very relevant to the quote itself. And I'm just putting it in here to have for reference. So because I'm not dating it, I feel like it also takes the pressure off of me to update this regularly. I update it when I feel like it. And that is something that really makes this project manageable for me. If you follow me regularly, you know I have a lot of journals and scrapbook projects and other things that I make sure to update very regularly. I like doing these projects. I like updating them regularly. I like having this complete record of my life, but I don't need any more things on that list. So the Commonplace book is something that is specifically not dated for my purposes so that I can jump in and out of it as needed for my life. So I wanted to move into some of the questions that you guys asked. I put a question box up on Instagram recently asking if you had any questions about my commonplacing for my update video. And I wanted to jump into a few of those here. So the first question that comes up a lot, I kind of already answered, but that is, how often am I updating my Commonplace book? And like I said, I do not put any pressure on myself to update this regularly. I update it when I feel like it. So I don't have a really good answer to that. I think it ends up being about once a month on average. Sometimes I know I've gone a few months without updating it. So this footage here that you can see is probably, so I know this was towards the end of 2024. I believe it was in late November, maybe early December that I was filming this. And I think I updated the journal maybe 2 or 3 times between this footage and the footage you'll see later in this video. And so you can see I don't update it that often. I don't necessarily add a ton in here. Sometimes I'll update and add like one thing. Other times I will do a couple of pages at a time. It really just depends on my mood and how I'm feeling and whether or not I'm, driven to work on this or not. So going along with that question, one of the questions I got, which I think is a great question, is how do I collect the items that are going to go into this journal if I'm not updating it regularly? And the answer to that is I have a folder on my computer that says essentially add to Commonplace book. And anytime I see something that I want to add to my Commonplace book, I will put it in that folder. And then once it's added to my Commonplace book, I will delete the item from that folder so that it's only stored in my Commonplace book at that point in time, as opposed to clogging up space on my phone and my computer. So part of what prompts me to update this is if that folder gets really full. Other times it doesn't really bother me, but sometimes I'm wanting to clean out my camera roll and I'm wanting to empty the things from that folder. This makes it, I just feel less cluttered to get them into this book, which is very, one of the reasons why I started this book in the first place. As far as saving things into that folder, the things that I do tend to save, so I have a lot of screenshots, and those are often things that I'm going to actually print and add into this notebook as opposed to write them out. I also have a lot of quotes from books. If I am grabbing a quote from a book that I'm reading, I simply just take a photo of the page of the book and I try to capture something from the top where I can see either the name of the book or the author so that I'll remember what book it's a photo of. And then I can just use that. Typically, if I take a photo and it's like the full page, when I skim over it again, I know what I was trying to capture to add in my Commonplace book. Occasionally I haven't, and then I figure it wasn't that important of a quote, so then I just won't add it. I also will save screenshots of things that I see, articles, anything that I want to add in here. I will either do it through a screenshot or taking a photo, and that way I have it in that folder to pull from. Okay, so next I want to answer the most common question I got. I want to say almost 10 people submitted this question. I think that this is for people who are trying to consider whether or not they want to make a Commonplace book for themselves. But essentially the question was, how often do I reference the stuff in this Commonplace book? And I think that depends. So sometimes I kind of forget it's here. Like I don't really reference it that often, but I don't think that it goes to waste to write it down. So some of the things I do reference pretty regularly, I will add in here, and I haven't done it in this older footage, but I will add it sometime between the older footage and the new footage so you'll see it. But I added a screenshot from the Coffee Monster Co. of the marker color matching between the kits. And that I reference pretty much every month when I set up my planner because I know that this is a place where I have that in there. Some of this other information is good reference information. And because I know it's in here, I will pull this out and I will use it. This is easily accessible on my desk, so it's not hard for me to grab it and find what I'm looking for. For the book quotes, I would say that's the second biggest thing I pull out of here after reference material, like the Coffee Monster Co. color chart. I will pull stuff out of here that is quotes and things when I'm working on my journal. So sometimes I'm working on a journal spread and I know I want to add a quote to fill in an area or to represent a feeling, or if I'm working on a project such as One Little Word where I want some quotes, I will use my Commonplace book to find those quotes, because this is where I write down quotes that I want to remember. A lot of the other stuff is just fun statistics and random facts. Some of that I don't really reference that often, but I do still find it super useful to write it in here for a number of reasons. The main reason is because I feel this need or this like drawn to capture this information. I wish that I could remember everything I ever read and everything I ever came across, but of course that's just not realistic. And that doesn't stop me from wanting to do that. So if I don't have a place like this to capture this information, I'm going to screenshot it, or I'm going to add it to a note on my phone, or I'm going to let it kind of float around in my head and want that information to be accessible, and so I won't forget about it. I might also put it in my journal. I might put it in my planner, and it's going to be all over the place, and it's going to be scattered, and it's going to feel cluttered. It's going to feel like there's all this information floating around, and I don't have the ability to harness it, use it, organize it, however you want to phrase it. So if I have an outlet like this, a Commonplace book, where I can put everything in here that is reference material, and I can use this as a home for that information, whether or not I go access that information, it's still serving its purpose, because what it is really doing is giving me an outlet to put that information on paper and then forget about it. And I don't have to stress about it, and I don't have to worry, about all this information. And sometimes it might come up. So for example, you can see here, we're now in the pages I recently updated. I have these charts from the New York Times, and they are all this statistical data on the impact of COVID on us as a society. And I found it really fascinating, and I wanted to remember that information. I wanted to capture it. So I screenshotted it from Instagram and I printed it, and I'm going to put it in here. And now I don't have to worry about it, because say that I'm having a conversation and this comes up, I can go get my Commonplace book and I can reference this information and I can use it. But either way, I'm not going to be stressing about trying to remember it. And it's just giving me some peace of mind to have it in here. I hope that adequately answered that question. I know that I think some of you were looking for the answer that I reference this regularly, and I don't. However, I do think it's still serving a purpose. And I think that the longer I keep this, the more I will reference it, because when I first started it, I kind of forgot about it from time to time. But now, because I've had it for so long, I automatically think, oh, I'm looking for a quote. I pull out my Commonplace book. And an added benefit of that is, it used to be that I would pull up Pinterest and then I would start scrolling, and then I would respond to a message that came through, and I would completely forget that I was working on a project and just looking for a quote. So having it on here is just so beneficial for so many reasons. Okay, so another question I got was kind of, what is the difference between this and a regular journal, and how do I decide what goes in here and in my journal? So I did answer some of the basics about a Commonplace book in my first Commonplace video, and that is linked in the description box below. So if you are completely new to commonplacing, I highly recommend checking out that video. You also could do a quick YouTube search for Commonplace books or commonplacing. There is a lot of information out there on what is a Commonplace book and what is the purpose and the history behind it. I also highly recommend Brandy Kincaid. She does not have a super active YouTube channel, but she does have some videos on there, but she is very active on Instagram, and she keeps Commonplace books, and she was kind of the initial inspiration for me to get a Commonplace book. Also, as a side note, I think she references hers pretty frequently because she's been keeping it for so long. So I hope to be there someday, and I'm working towards that. But essentially, what a commonplace book is a place to capture all of the ideas that are not your own. So that is kind of the easy distinction between this and my journal. My journal is where I'm writing down my thoughts and feelings throughout the day. Sometimes I will add quotes and other information in there to help support that story, but it is not the main purpose of my journaling. This is not my facts and feelings at all. This is purely factual information from outside sources that I want to remember. So a lot of them are quotes that I pull from books. Some of them are statistical data. Some of them are, articles I see, product suggestions, book suggestions, whatever it is, you name it. It's all in here from other sources, not from me. And so for me, it's pretty easy to figure out whether or not something belongs in my Commonplace book or elsewhere because of what the original source was. Okay, so I hope that this video helped answer some of your questions about my Commonplace book. If you do have more questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'm happy to answer them, and I will try to provide another video update every quarter or so. I like to share it. I think it keeps me accountable to actually update this journal. And I actually liked how this one came out with the older footage and the new, so you could kind of see how my supplies have evolved and my approach has evolved. And, that's it. So here I wanted to do a quick flip through at the end of everything that I did, at least this month. I don't think I flipped through everything I did in this video because I said I didn't actually remember what the first video was. Oh, actually, yeah, I did. So you can see all of these pages that I did either in the first video, in this one, or in between. So over the course of the past 4 months or so. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thanks. Bye.